As the evening deepens and the world grows quiet, allow yourself to settle into this moment. Perhaps you're resting now, your day complete, seeking that gentle transition between wakefulness and dreams. Or maybe you've chosen this time specifically for contemplation, for the peaceful exploration of distant times and magnificent creations. Either way, tonight's journey requires nothing of you but to listen, to breathe, and to imagine as we travel together across millennia to witness humanity's most profound architectural achievements, the seven wonders of the ancient world. These monumental creations stand as silent witnesses to human ingenuity, ambition, and artistry. Some have crumbled to dust, leaving only whispers in ancient texts. Others still rise against desert skies, defying time itself. Each wonder emerged from the hands and minds of people not so different from ourselves, people who dreamed of touching eternity through stone, bronze, and gardens that seemed to float in the air. As you prepare to drift into this narrative, know that the journey will be gentle and unhurried. We will explore not just the physical dimensions of these magnificent structures, but the societies that created them, the beliefs that inspired them, and the mysteries that still surround them. Archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new insights about these ancient marvels, and we'll examine how modern science has helped us better understand their construction and significance. Before we begin our exploration in earnest, let this moment be one of transition, from the concerns of your day to a space of quiet wonder, from the present moment to the deep past where these monuments first rose against ancient skies. Feel your breathing slow and your thoughts settle. The seven wonders await us, patient as they have been for thousands of years. Let us start our journey where it feels most fitting, with the only wonder that has survived intact into our modern era, standing silently in the Egyptian desert as it has for over 4,000 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises from the desert plateau like a mountain fashioned by human hands, its massive limestone blocks reflecting the golden light of dawn, just as they did when the pharaohs ruled the fertile valley of the Nile. Built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BCE, the Great Pyramid originally stood at a height of 146 meters, making it the tallest human-made structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years. Today, even with its smooth outer casing stones removed over the centuries, it still reaches 138 meters into the Egyptian sky. Its base covers an area of more than 5 hectares, large enough to contain 10 football fields, and consists of more than 2 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 30 tons. The precision with which these massive stones were cut and placed continues to astonish modern engineers and archaeologists. The base of the pyramid forms an almost perfect square, with the 4 sides aligned to the cardinal directions with remarkable accuracy, the greatest deviation being only about 1/12 of a degree. The sides of the base differ in length by mere centimeters, a stunning achievement considering the tools available in the Bronze Age. How did the ancient Egyptians achieve such precision without modern measuring instruments? This question has fascinated scholars for centuries. Evidence suggests they used simple but ingenious methods, including weighted plumb lines and carefully measured ropes. The alignment with the cardinal directions may have been accomplished by observing the stars. particularly circumpolar stars that never set below the horizon, allowing the builders to establish a remarkably accurate north-south orientation. As night falls across the Giza Plateau, imagine standing at the base of this colossal monument. The massive stones seem to absorb the deepening blue of the evening sky, while the last rays of sunlight catch the upper tiers, giving them a golden glow that slowly fades to shadow. In this moment, the boundary between ancient and modern seems to dissolve, and we might almost glimpse the world as it appeared to those who first witnessed the completed pyramid over 4 millennia ago. The interior of the Great Pyramid reveals engineering skills that match the precision of its exterior. 3 main chambers lie within. The unfinished subterranean chamber, cut into the bedrock beneath the pyramid, the misnamed Queen's Chamber at the center, and the King's Chamber higher up. These are connected by a series of passages, including the remarkable Grand Gallery, a corbelled corridor nearly 47 meters long and 8.5 meters high, its walls formed of massive limestone blocks that gradually angle inward to create a false arch. Above the King's Chamber lie 5 small relieving chambers, designed to distribute the enormous weight of the stone above and prevent the ceiling of the burial chamber from collapsing. This sophisticated engineering solution has worked perfectly for thousands of years, protecting the simple but elegant granite sarcophagus that still rests within the king's chamber, though Khufu's mummy and funerary treasures disappeared long ago to the hands of tomb robbers. The methods used to construct this immense monument have been debated for centuries. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing around 450 BCE, claimed that it took 20 years and the labor of 100,000 workers to complete. Modern scholars believe the number was closer to 20 or 30,000, with many being skilled craftsmen rather than slaves, as was once commonly believed. Recent archaeological discoveries at nearby workers' villages suggest that those who built the pyramid were well fed and received medical care, evidence that they were valued members of Egyptian society. How did these workers move the massive stone blocks from quarries to the construction site? For the limestone blocks that form the bulk of the pyramid, the solution was relatively straightforward. These came from quarries close to Giza and were likely dragged on wooden sleds across moistened sand, a technique that significantly reduces friction. The harder question concerns the granite blocks used for the interior chambers, some weighing as much as 80 tons, which came from quarries in Aswan, more than 800 kilometers to the south. These massive stones would have been transported by boat along the Nile during the annual flood season, when water levels were high enough to carry heavily laden barges. From the river to the construction site, they may have been moved on wooden rollers or sledges along carefully prepared roads. The precise method for raising the blocks into place remains debated, though most archaeologists now favor the use of ramps that spiraled around the pyramid as it rose, allowing teams of workers to drag the stones upward level by level. As the full moon rises over the desert, its silver light washes across the angular face of the Great Pyramid, creating a geometric pattern of light and shadow. In this ethereal illumination, we might imagine the bustling activity of the construction site as it once was, the calls of foremen, the creaking of wooden sledges, the rhythmic chants of workers coordinating their efforts to move stones weighing as much as a modern truck. Their world was illuminated by oil lamps and torches, their muscles straining against ropes of papyrus and palm fiber, their skills passed down through generations of craftsmen. The purpose of the Great Pyramid was primarily to serve as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, providing a physical anchor for his spirit in the afterlife. But it also served as a powerful symbol of royal authority and Egyptian cosmology. The pyramid shape itself may have represented the primordial mound from which all creation arose according to Egyptian mythology, or the slanting rays of the sun breaking through the clouds. Some scholars suggest the smooth, angled sides may have been designed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to join the circumpolar stars, which the Egyptians associated with eternal life. Originally, the entire pyramid was encased in smooth white limestone, quarried from Tura across the Nile. These casing stones were cut with such precision that the joints between them were barely visible, less than half a millimeter wide. When intact, the pyramid would have gleamed brilliantly in the desert sun, visible for many kilometers across the Nile Valley. Over the centuries, most of these outer stones were removed to build mosques and fortresses in medieval Cairo, revealing the rougher core blocks we see today. The Great Pyramid did not stand alone, but was part of a complex that included smaller pyramids for Khufu's queens, boat pits containing disassembled boats for the pharaoh's use in the afterlife, a mortuary temple where offerings were made to the deceased king, and a causeway that connected to a valley temple near the Nile. It was also just one element in the broader Giza necropolis, which includes the slightly smaller pyramids of Khufu's son Khafre and grandson Menkaure, as well as the enigmatic Great Sphinx. As stars wheel slowly across the night sky above Giza, the same stars that guided the ancient builders in aligning the pyramid, we might reflect on the extraordinary legacy of this monument. It has outlasted the civilization that created it, surviving invasions, earthquakes, and the slow erosion of wind-blown sand. It has been studied by scholars from ancient Greece to modern times, yet still holds secrets that continue to emerge with new archaeological techniques and discoveries. From the heights of the Great Pyramid, let us now journey eastward, across deserts and mountains, to the fertile valley of Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. Here, in what is now Iraq, once stood the magnificent city of Babylon, and within it, a wonder that has captured the imagination of poets, artists, and dreamers for over 2,000 years. The Hanging Gardens. Unlike the solid reality of the Great Pyramid, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon hover between history and myth, their very existence a matter of scholarly debate. No definitive archaeological evidence of the gardens has been found at Babylon, and curiously, they are not mentioned in any surviving Babylonian texts. Yet they appear vividly in the writings of several Greek and Roman authors who describe them as a marvel of engineering, botany, and beauty. According to these classical sources, the Hanging Gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 BCE as a gift to his wife, Amadis of Media. She was said to have missed the green mountains of her homeland, and so the king created an artificial mountain of gardens to comfort her in the flat plains of Mesopotamia. The Greek writer Strabo described them as consisting of vaulted terraces raised one above another and resting upon cube-shaped pillars, hollow and filled with earth to allow trees of the largest size to be planted. The pillars, the vaults, and the terraces are constructed of baked brick and asphalt. The gardens were not actually hanging in the sense of being suspended in the air, but rather were built on a series of tiered terraces, creating the impression of a lush, green mountain rising above the mud brick cityscape of Babylon. Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century BCE, described the highest terrace as being 50 cubits, approximately 23 meters, above the ground, with views across the entire city. Perhaps the most remarkable feature of the Hanging Gardens, if they existed as described, would have been their irrigation system. Babylon receives very little rainfall, especially during the hot summer months when temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius. To keep the gardens lush and green would have required bringing water from the Euphrates River, which flowed nearby but was still below the level of the terraces. According to Strabo and other classical authors, this was accomplished through an ingenious system of hydraulic engineering. Water was raised from the river using what may have been a chain pump or screw device, similar to the Archimedes screw that would be developed centuries later. This water was then distributed throughout the gardens via aqueducts, channels, and possibly terracotta pipes, creating artificial streams and small pools among the plantings. The sound of water would have been constant within the gardens, the gentle splash of fountains, the musical trickle of streams flowing down from one terrace to the next, the soft dripping from irrigated soil. In the dry heat of Mesopotamia, this oasis of moisture would have created not just visual beauty, but a microclimate, cooler and more humid than the surrounding city, where the king and queen could walk in comfort even during the hottest part of the day. What plants might have grown in these gardens? Classical accounts mention trees of various kinds, suggesting that the terraces supported substantial soil depth. Modern botanists speculate that the gardens might have included date palms, which were economically important in Mesopotamia, as well as fig trees, pomegranates, and perhaps even conifers imported from the mountains. Flowering vines may have cascaded down the terraces, while aromatic herbs and flowering plants added color and scent to this paradise on earth. The structure that supported these gardens would have been a marvel of engineering for its time. The weight of soil, plants, and water is substantial, and to prevent collapse and water damage, the builders would have needed to create a strong foundation and waterproof the terraces. Archaeologists believe this may have been accomplished using layers of reeds, bitumen, a naturally occurring tar, and lead sheets to prevent water from seeping through to the structures below. If we were to stand within these gardens at sunset, what might we experience? Imagine the golden light filtering through the leaves of tall palms, casting dappled shadows across stone pathways. The air would be heavy with the scent of flowers and herbs, the temperature pleasantly cool compared to the baking streets below. Birds would flit among the branches, having found this green haven in the midst of the desert. And from the upper terraces, we might look out across the magnificent city of Babylon, with its massive walls, towering ziggurats, and the blue ribbon of the Euphrates winding through it all. Why has no archaeological evidence of the gardens been found? There are several possibilities. The gardens may have been destroyed by earthquakes or floods long before archaeological excavations began in the 19th century. The location may have been misidentified, with some scholars suggesting that the gardens were actually in the Assyrian city of Nineveh rather than Babylon. Or they may have been smaller or less dramatic than the classical accounts suggest, making their remains harder to identify among the ruins of the city. A more radical possibility is that the Hanging Gardens never existed at all, at least not as described in classical sources. They may have been a literary creation, perhaps inspired by real Mesopotamian garden traditions, but elaborated into an idealized vision of an earthly paradise. If this is the case, they still stand as a powerful cultural legacy, a symbol of humanity's desire to create beauty and to bring the natural world into harmony with architectural achievement. As night deepens over the plains of Mesopotamia and the stars emerge in a sky once studied by Babylonian astronomers who charted the movements of planets and constellations, we leave behind the question of the Hanging Gardens and journey westward again, across mountains and sea to the coast of ancient Ionia in what is now western Turkey. Here stood another of the seven wonders, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. Unlike the Hanging Gardens, the existence of the Temple of Artemis is well documented both in historical texts and through archaeological excavations. In fact, there were several versions of the temple built on the same site over the centuries, each more magnificent than the last. The final and most splendid version was the one counted among the seven wonders, a marble masterpiece that dazzled visitors from across the ancient Mediterranean world. The site of Ephesus had been sacred to a mother goddess since prehistoric times, associated with Cybele by the indigenous Anatolian peoples. When Greek colonists arrived in the region around 1000 BCE, they identified this deity with their goddess Artemis, though the Ephesian Artemis maintained distinctive characteristics that set her apart from the virgin huntress of mainland Greek tradition. She was portrayed with multiple breast-like protrusions on her torso, which some scholars interpret as eggs, beehives, or bull testicles rather than human breasts, all symbols of fertility and abundance. The earliest known temple at the site was built in the 8th century BCE, but it was the version begun around 550 BCE that first achieved legendary status. This temple was financed by Croesus, the famously wealthy king of Lydia, who had conquered Ephesus. According to the Roman author Pliny the Elder, this temple took 120 years to complete, suggesting an extraordinary level of craftsmanship and attention to detail. The temple that Croesus helped fund was described as the first monumental structure built entirely of marble. It measured approximately 115 meters in length and 55 meters in width, with 127 columns supporting its roof. These columns were about 20 meters high and decorated with sculpted reliefs at their bases, an innovative feature that would influence temple architecture throughout the Greek world. On a quiet summer evening, we might imagine approaching this temple as ancient pilgrims once did. The marble columns would glow golden in the light of the setting sun, seeming to float above their sculptured bases. The rhythmic spacing of these columns would create a forest of stone, drawing the eye toward the entrance of the sanctuary. Birds might nest in the upper reaches of the temple, their calls echoing in the still air as they return to roost for the night. This magnificent temple stood for only about 2 centuries before disaster struck. On July 21st, 356 BCE, a date precisely recorded by ancient historians. A man named Herostratus deliberately set fire to the wooden roof beams of the temple, causing extensive damage. When captured and tortured, he admitted that his motive was to achieve lasting fame through this destructive act. The Ephesian authorities, in response, forbade anyone from ever recording his name, a prohibition that obviously failed, as we still know his name today. According to legend, the temple burned on the same night that Alexander the Great was born in Macedonia. The Greek biographer Plutarch later wrote that Artemis was too busy taking care of the birth of Alexander to save her temple, a story that Alexander himself apparently enjoyed. When the conqueror passed through Ephesus in 334 BCE, he offered to pay for the temple's reconstruction, but the proud Ephesians declined, saying it was not fitting for one god to build a temple to another, a diplomatic nod to Alexander's divine pretensions. The Ephesians rebuilt the temple themselves, creating an even more magnificent structure that became known as one of the Seven Wonders. This new temple closely followed the design of its predecessor, but with even greater attention to artistic detail. The new columns were carved with full sculptural reliefs on their lower portions, and at least 36 of them featured sculptural decorations created by the finest artists of the age. Inside the temple stood a statue of Artemis, made not of marble, but of a dark wood, possibly ebony or grapewood, with gold ornaments. The goddess was portrayed in her distinct Ephesian form, wearing a crown shaped like the walls of a city, symbolizing her role as protector of Ephesus, and with her torso covered in the distinctive protuberances that signified her role as a goddess of abundance and fertility. The temple served not just as a religious sanctuary, but as an important economic institution. It functioned as a bank, where individuals, cities, and even kings could deposit wealth for safekeeping. The temple's status as sacred ground made it a relatively secure location, protected both by religious taboo and by the political right of asylum. Merchants, travelers, and rulers alike entrusted their gold and valuable items to the temple's custody, and in return, the temple could lend these deposits out at interest, generating revenue to maintain its operations. Around the temple complex, festivals were held regularly in honor of Artemis, bringing pilgrims from across Asia Minor and beyond. These festivals combined religious ceremonies with athletic competitions, musical performances, and markets where traders offered exotic goods. The month of Artemision in the Ephesian calendar was entirely dedicated to the goddess, with the grandest celebrations occurring around the time of the full moon. If we were to visit during such a festival, the temple would be even more impressive at night, with hundreds of oil lamps illuminating the exterior and interior. The flickering light would bring the sculptural decorations to life, creating an impression of movement among the figures carved in relief on the columns and friezes. The scent of incense would fill the air, and the sound of hymns sung in honor of Artemis might echo through the columned halls. This magnificent temple stood for over 600 years, surviving changing political fortunes as Ephesus passed from Greek to Roman control. It was damaged by a raid of the Goths in 262 CE, but was repaired. Its final destruction came in the early Christian era, when the temple was systematically dismantled. Some of its marble blocks were reused in other buildings, including the Basilica of St. John in Ephesus and Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. By the time the site was rediscovered and excavated in the 19th century, little remained of the once magnificent temple except for its foundations, a single reconstructed column, and fragments of sculptural decorations. These fragments, many now housed in the British Museum, give us tantalizing glimpses of the artistic richness that once adorned this wonder of the ancient world. As the stars that once shone above the Temple of Artemis continue their eternal procession across the sky, we continue our journey, sailing across the Aegean Sea to the Greek mainland, to the sacred sanctuary of Olympia in the northwestern Peloponnese. Here stood another of the seven wonders, the massive gold and ivory statue of Zeus, created by the sculptor Phidias around 435 BCE. Olympia was one of the most important religious sites in the ancient Greek world, dedicated primarily to Zeus, king of the gods. It was also the location of the original Olympic Games, held every 4 years in honor of Zeus. These games brought competitors and spectators from all the Greek city-states, creating a pan-Hellenic festival that transcended the political divisions of the Greek world. The sanctuary contained many structures, including treasuries built by various city-states, training facilities for athletes, accommodations for visitors, and several temples. The most important of these was the Temple of Zeus, a massive Doric structure completed around 456 BCE. Built of local limestone covered with white stucco to resemble marble, the temple measured approximately 64 meters long, 28 meters wide, and 20 meters high to the top of the pediment. Inside this temple, between two rows of tall columns that divided the interior space into 3 aisles, sat the wonder that drew visitors from across the Mediterranean, the colossal statue of Zeus, created by Phidias, the same sculptor who had designed the statue of Athena for the Parthenon in Athens. The statue depicted Zeus seated on an elaborate throne. According to ancient descriptions, it was about 13 meters tall, so large that it almost touched the roof of the temple. This created the impression, as the Greek geographer Strabo wrote, that if Zeus were to stand up, he would unroof the temple. The effect was deliberate, conveying the barely contained power of the king of gods. Unlike the stone sculptures we often associate with ancient Greece, this statue was created using the chryselephantine technique, gold and ivory layered over a wooden framework. Ivory, carefully thinned and softened, was used for all exposed flesh, while gold formed the robes, hair, beard, and ornaments. The eyes were made of precious stones, adding to the lifelike quality of the figure. The overall effect, according to ancient accounts, was awe-inspiring. The Greek orator Dio Chrysostom, who saw the statue in the 1st century CE, wrote that a single glimpse of it could make one forget all earthly troubles. Whoever is heavy laden in his soul, who has experienced many misfortunes and sorrows in his life, and who cannot find sweet sleep, he, I think, if he stood before this image, would forget all the calamities and troubles that come in human life. If we were to approach this statue in the quiet of evening, after most visitors had departed, what might we experience? The temple would be growing dark, with just a few oil lamps casting their gentle light. The gold surfaces of the statue would catch and reflect this light, creating a warm glow around the seated figure. The ivory skin would have a soft, luminous quality, almost seeming to radiate its own gentle light in the dimness. And the eyes, made of precious stones, might appear to follow our movements, creating the uncanny sense that we were in the presence not of a statue, but of the god himself. The statue was not just a stunning artistic achievement, but also a complex engineering feat. The wooden framework had to support the weight of the gold and ivory exterior, while allowing for the expansion and contraction of materials due to changes in temperature and humidity. Beneath the temple floor, a shallow pool of olive oil helped maintain proper humidity levels, protecting the ivory from cracking in the dry Greek climate. Zeus was portrayed seated majestically on a cedar throne, inlaid with ebony, ivory, gold, and precious stones. In his right hand, he held a statue of Nike, the goddess of victory, while his left hand grasped a scepter topped with an eagle, his sacred bird. His head was crowned with an olive wreath, and his robes were decorated with intricate patterns of animals and lilies. The base of the statue was almost as elaborate as the figure itself, decorated with images from Greek mythology. According to Pausanias, a Greek traveler who described the statue in the 2nd century CE, these included the birth of Aphrodite from the sea, Helios and Selene, the sun and moon, driving their chariots, and various scenes from the mythical family of Zeus. The statue remained at Olympia for over 800 years, surviving the Roman conquest of Greece and continuing to draw visitors and worshippers despite changing religious and political circumstances. Its ultimate fate is unclear. Some ancient sources suggest it was destroyed in a fire at Constantinople, where it had been taken in the 5th century CE. Others indicate it may have been destroyed at Olympia itself. Either way, this masterpiece of ancient art is long lost, known to us now only through descriptions and small-scale copies that appear on coins and in miniature sculptures. Archaeological excavations at Olympia have uncovered the foundations of the Temple of Zeus, along with some of its sculptural decorations, giving us a sense of the architectural setting in which the statue once stood. They have also revealed Phidias's workshop, located nearby, where archaeologists found tools, molds, and even an ancient drinking cup inscribed with the words, "I belong to Phidias." Tangible connections to the artist who created one of the ancient world's most renowned works of art. As night fully descends on Olympia, and the same stars that shone above ancient Olympic athletes now illuminate the quiet ruins of the sanctuary, we continue our journey. Traveling across the Aegean Sea once more, we arrive at the southwestern coast of what is now Turkey, at the ancient city of Halicarnassus, modern Bodrum. Here stood another of the 7 wonders, the mausoleum, a tomb of such magnificence that its name became the generic term for any grand funeral monument. The mausoleum was built between 353 and 350 BCE as the final resting place of Mausolus, a local ruler who governed Caria as a satrap, provincial governor, within the Persian Empire. Though nominally subject to Persian authority, Mausolus ruled with considerable independence, moving his capital from inland Mylasa to the coastal city of Halicarnassus, which he developed into a cultural and commercial center. Mausolus was married to his sister, Artemisia II, a practice not uncommon among the ruling families of Caria, who succeeded him as ruler after his death in 353 BCE. It was Artemisia who oversaw the completion of the magnificent tomb that her husband had begun planning during his lifetime, sparing no expense to create a monument that would preserve his name for eternity, an ambition that was remarkably successful, as we still use the term mausoleum today. The mausoleum combined elements from three distinct architectural traditions: Greek, Lycian, and Egyptian. From Greek architecture came the elegant proportions and the use of columns in a temple-like structure. From Lycia, a region to the east of Korea, known for its distinctive rock-cut tombs, came the concept of an elevated tomb beneath a steep roof. And from Egypt came the pyramid-like structure that topped the monument, creating a stepped effect rising toward the sky. According to ancient descriptions and modern archaeological reconstructions, the mausoleum stood approximately 45 meters tall and was composed of four main elements. The base was a nearly square platform, each side measuring about 40 meters, which contained the burial chamber. Above this rose a colonnade of 36 Ionic columns. The third level was a pyramid of 24 steps, which tapered toward the top. And at the summit stood a massive marble sculpture of a four-horse chariot, in which rode figures of Mausolus and Artemisia. The entire structure was decorated with sculptural reliefs created by four of the most renowned sculptors of ancient Greece: Scopas, Bryaxis, Leocharis, and Timotheus. These reliefs depicted scenes from Greek mythology and history, as well as events from Mausolus's own life. Different sculptors were assigned to different sides of the monument, creating a variety of artistic styles within a harmonious whole. If we were to visit the mausoleum in the quiet of evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across Halicarnassus and the waters of the harbor began to darken to deep blue, what might we experience? The white marble of the monument would glow golden in the last light of day, the sculptural decorations creating patterns of light and shadow that brought the stone figures to life. The sheer scale of the structure would be impressive, rising high above the surrounding buildings of the city. As darkness fell, the mausoleum would stand silhouetted against the night sky, its distinctive stepped outline visible from ships far out in the harbor. Perhaps oil lamps would illuminate parts of the monument, particularly the sculptural chariot at its summit, creating a beacon-like effect visible throughout the city and beyond. The sound of waves breaking against the harbor walls might be the only sound in the still night air, a rhythmic backdrop to this silent monument to one ruler's quest for immortality. The mausoleum stood intact for over 16 centuries, surviving the fall of the Persian Empire, the conquests of Alexander the Great, the rise of Rome, and the transition to Christianity. It was damaged by earthquakes, but remained largely intact until the 13th century CE. Then, in the early 15th century, the Knights of St. John of Malta began to dismantle the already damaged structure to use its stones for building a fortress, Bodrum Castle, which still stands today. During this dismantling process, the Knights discovered the burial chamber, which had remarkably remained sealed and undisturbed. According to accounts from that time, they found valuable items within, including a sarcophagus believed to be that of Mausolus himself. Unfortunately, they did not preserve these finds, and within a day of opening the chamber, everything had been destroyed or scattered. In the 19th century, British archaeologist Charles Thomas Newton conducted excavations at the site, uncovering numerous fragments of the mausoleum's sculptural decorations. These pieces, including portions of the massive chariot group that once topped the monument, were taken to the British Museum in London, where they remain today. These fragments, along with ancient descriptions, have allowed archaeologists to create detailed reconstructions of how the mausoleum likely appeared. The site of the mausoleum in modern Bodrum is marked by an excavated pit that reveals the foundations of the monument, along with some architectural fragments too large to be moved. It is a quiet place now, with little to suggest the magnificent structure that once rose from this spot. Yet in museums around the world, particularly the British Museum, the surviving sculptures still convey something of the artistic brilliance that made this tomb one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. As the night deepens over Halicarnassus and the stars that once guided ancient mariners into its harbor now shine above the quiet archaeological site, we continue our journey. Sailing across the eastern Mediterranean, we come to the island of Rhodes, where once stood a wonder of engineering and art combined. The Colossus of Rhodes, a massive bronze statue of the sun god Helios that guarded the island's harbor. The Colossus was built to commemorate a significant military victory. In 305 BCE, Rhodes was besieged by Demetrius Poliorcetes, the besieger, son of one of Alexander the Great's successors, who sought to punish the island for its alliance with his rival. After a year-long siege, Demetrius withdrew, leaving behind much of his siege equipment. The Rhodians sold this abandoned equipment and used the proceeds to commission a statue of their patron deity, Helios, as a monument to their successful resistance. The statue was created by the sculptor Charis of Lindos, a native of Rhodes and a student of Lysippos, one of the most renowned sculptors of the Hellenistic period. Work began in 304 BCE and took 12 years to complete, with the finished statue being dedicated around 292 BCE. According to ancient accounts, the Colossus stood approximately 33 meters tall, making it one of the tallest statues in the ancient world. This is comparable to the height of the Statue of Liberty from her feet to the top of her head, though the Statue of Liberty stands on a substantial pedestal that makes her overall height much greater. How was such a massive bronze statue constructed in the 3rd century BCE? The precise methods used by Charis remain a matter of scholarly debate, but it's likely that the statue was built using techniques similar to those employed for other large bronze statues of the period, though on a much larger scale. The process would have begun with a detailed model of the statue at a smaller scale. From this, a full-size framework of wood and iron would have been constructed, around which clay would be applied to form the exact shape of the statue. This clay model would then be covered with wax sheets of the desired final thickness of the bronze. Additional clay would be applied over the wax, and the entire structure would be heated, causing the wax to melt and drain out through channels, a technique known as lost wax casting. The hollow space left by the melted wax would then be filled with molten bronze, creating a hollow bronze shell. Given the size of the Colossus, this process would have been done in sections, with the pieces later assembled on site. The interior framework of iron and stone would have remained in place to provide structural support for the thin bronze skin. A popular misconception about the Colossus is that it straddled the entrance to the harbor of Rhodes, with ships sailing between its legs. This image, while dramatic, is not supported by ancient descriptions of the statue and would have been structurally impossible given the width of the harbor mouth and the engineering capabilities of the time. Instead, the statue likely stood to one side of the harbor entrance, perhaps on a pedestal near the commercial port or on a breakwater. The statue depicted Helios, the sun god, most likely nude or lightly draped in accordance with Greek artistic traditions. He may have worn a radiate crown, with spikes representing the rays of the sun emanating from his head. One hand might have been raised, perhaps holding a torch or other light source that served as a beacon for ships, while the other may have held a spear or other attribute. If we were to approach Rhodes by sea in the evening, as ancient mariners once did, what might we experience? As the sun set behind the hills of the island, the massive bronze figure would be silhouetted against the darkening sky, its polished surface perhaps still catching the last rays of its divine counterpart. As darkness fell, if the statue indeed incorporated some form of beacon, a light would become visible, guiding ships safely into the harbor. From the water, the sheer scale of the figure would become apparent, dwarfing the buildings of the city and even the ships entering the harbor. The technical achievement would be impressive to modern eyes. To ancient visitors, the statue might well have seemed a manifestation of divine power, a fitting representation of the sun god who was the patron and protector of the island. Unlike most of the other seven wonders, the Colossus stood for only a brief period. In 226 BCE, just 66 years after its completion, the statue was toppled by a strong earthquake that struck Rhodes. The statue broke at the knees, with the upper portion falling to the ground. The Rhodians, interpreting this as a sign from the gods, chose not to rebuild the statue, following advice from the Delphic oracle. The fallen pieces of the Colossus remained where they fell for over 800 years, becoming a tourist attraction in their own right. The Roman author Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century CE, noted that few people can wrap their arms around the thumb of the fallen statue, and that each of its fingers was larger than most statues. The pieces remained until 654 CE, when Arab forces captured Rhodes and sold the bronze remains to a merchant from Edessa. According to the account of Theophanes the Confessor, the merchant needed 900 camels to transport all the metal. Today, nothing remains of the Colossus except its reputation and its place among the seven wonders. The exact location where it stood is debated among archaeologists, though most favor a site near the Mandrake harbor. Modern visitors to Rhodes can see a pair of bronze deer statues marking the supposed entrance to the ancient harbor, a much more modest arrangement than the colossal statue that once greeted ancient travelers. As night envelops the island of Rhodes, and the stars that once guided ancient sailors now shine above the harbor where the Colossus once stood, we complete our journey through the seven wonders with one final destination. Sailing northward across the Mediterranean, we come to the great port city of Alexandria in Egypt, where the last of the seven wonders once illuminated the night. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, or the Pharos. Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE and developed into one of the most important cities of the ancient world under the Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled Egypt after Alexander's death. Situated on the Mediterranean coast at the western edge of the Nile Delta, the city became a major center of Hellenistic culture, commerce, and learning, home to the famous Library of Alexandria and scholars from across the Mediterranean world. The city's location offered many advantages, but the coastline presented a significant hazard to ships approaching the harbor, a dangerous reef that had caused many shipwrecks. To guide vessels safely into the harbor, Ptolemy the First Soter began planning a lighthouse on the small island of Pharos, which was connected to the mainland by a man-made causeway called the Heptastadion, forming two harbors. The actual construction began during the reign of his son, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, around 280 BCE, and was completed some 15 to 20 years later. The architect of this remarkable structure was Sostratus of Cnidus, a Greek architect and engineer. According to the ancient writer Lucian, Sostratus secretly inscribed his name beneath the plaster of the lighthouse's outer walls, which bore an official dedication to the Ptolemaic rulers. As the plaster weathered away over the centuries, his hidden inscription was revealed: Sostratus of Cnidus, son of Dexiphanes, to the gods who save sailors. The lighthouse was a technological marvel and the first of its kind. While beacon fires had been used for centuries to guide ships, the Pharos represented the first known purpose-built lighthouse in the world, and certainly the most elaborate. It was also one of the tallest human-made structures of the ancient world, with ancient sources giving its height as between 120 and 140 meters. The structure consisted of three tiers: a square base, an octagonal middle section, and a cylindrical upper section topped by a statue, possibly of Zeus Soter, Zeus the Savior, or Poseidon. The entire structure was built of limestone blocks, with the interior containing a ramp that allowed fuel to be transported to the top, where a fire burned at night. Metal mirrors were used to reflect and amplify the light from this fire, making it visible to ships many kilometers out to sea. If we were to approach Alexandria by sea at night, as countless ancient mariners did, what would we experience? Far out on the dark waters, we might first glimpse a small point of light on the horizon, barely distinguishable from the stars. As our ship drew closer, this light would grow brighter, eventually revealing itself as a substantial fire burning atop a massive tower. The reflected and amplified light would create a beam cutting through the darkness, pointing the way to the safety of Alexandria's harbor. By day, the lighthouse would be an equally impressive sight. Its pale limestone would gleam in the Mediterranean sun, rising in three distinct tiers from the eastern end of the island of Pharos. Ships entering or leaving the harbor would pass close by its base, giving sailors an appreciation for its massive scale and architectural elegance. From certain vantage points in the city, the lighthouse would be visible rising above the buildings, a constant reminder of the city's maritime importance and technological achievement. The interior of the lighthouse contained ramps rather than stairs, wide enough for pack animals to ascend, carrying the wood and other combustible materials needed to maintain the beacon fire. According to some accounts, the lighthouse may have housed hundreds of workers, including those who maintained the fire, operated the reflecting mirrors, observed shipping traffic, collected harbor fees, and provided security for this crucial infrastructure. The lighthouse became one of Alexandria's defining landmarks and a symbol of the city's prominence. It appeared on coins minted in Alexandria, was described by numerous ancient authors, and was eventually recognized as one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Its influence extended far beyond Alexandria. The word pharos became the root of the word for lighthouse in many languages, including French, fair, Italian, and Spanish, pharaoh, and Romanian, far. The pharaohs of Alexandria stood for over 1,600 years, far longer than most of the other seven wonders. It survived the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the Roman conquest of Egypt, the rise of Christianity, and the early Islamic period. The lighthouse was damaged by earthquakes in 956 and 1303, with the latter causing significant structural failure. By 1480, when the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, Qaitbay, visited the site, the lighthouse was in ruins. The Sultan used the fallen stones to build a medieval fort, which still stands today on the site of the ancient lighthouse. Archaeological evidence of the lighthouse has been discovered both on land and underwater. Marine archaeological expeditions in Alexandria's eastern harbor have discovered thousands of stone blocks, columns, statues, and other architectural elements believed to have come from the lighthouse when it collapsed into the sea. Some of these artifacts, including a colossal statue thought to represent Ptolemy II that may have stood at the lighthouse entrance, have been raised from the seabed and are now displayed in museums. As the stars wheel above Alexandria, the same stars that guided ancient ships to this harbor from across the Mediterranean, we've completed our journey through the seven wonders of the ancient world. Only one of these wonders, the Great Pyramid of Giza, still stands in its original form. The others have fallen to earthquakes, fire, or deliberate destruction, or in the case of the Hanging Gardens, may never have existed outside the pages of ancient texts. Yet these seven remarkable achievements continue to capture our imagination, inspiring artists, architects, engineers, and dreamers for over 2,000 years. They stand as testimony to human creativity, ambition, and technical skill, reminders that the desire to build something magnificent, something that touches the divine, is deeply embedded in human nature across cultures and time periods. Each wonder responded to a fundamental human need or aspiration. The Great Pyramid and the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus addressed our confrontation with mortality, creating monumental tombs that seem to deny death's finality. The Temple of Artemis and the statue of Zeus at Olympia expressed our spiritual yearnings, creating sacred spaces where the divine felt present and accessible. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, if they existed, represented our desire to reshape nature, bringing beauty and comfort to inhospitable environments. And the Colossus of Rhodes and the Lighthouse of Alexandria embodied our relationship with the sea, both celebrating maritime victory and providing practical aid to those navigating dangerous waters. While the ancient wonders have mostly vanished, their legacy continues in the great architectural and engineering achievements of later eras. From the soaring cathedrals of medieval Europe to the gleaming skyscrapers of modern cities, from the intricate canal systems of Asia to the International Space Station orbiting above our planet, humans continue to push the boundaries of what is possible, creating new wonders that would astonish the ancient creators of the original seven. As the night grows deeper and your thoughts perhaps begin to drift toward sleep, consider the threads that connect us to those ancient builders and dreamers. Though separated by thousands of years, We share the same human capacity for imagination, for technical innovation, for finding meaning in creating something that outlasts our individual lives. The seven wonders of the ancient world may be largely lost to time, but the wonder they inspire, the sense of awe at human achievement, remains very much alive, a quiet flame passing from one generation to the next across the vast expanse of history. The stars continue their silent passage across the night sky, the same stars that shone above the pyramid at Giza, the gardens of Babylon, the temple at Ephesus, the statue at Olympia, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the lighthouse of Alexandria. In their light, we might find a connection to those ancient wonders and to the people who created them, a reminder that while civilizations rise and fall, the human capacity for wonder endures. But the ancient wonders represent just one chapter in humanity's ongoing relationship with monumental architecture and engineering. As our journey through the seven wonders of the ancient world concludes, we might turn our attention to more recent achievements that have earned the title of wonder in the modern era. Just as the ancient list celebrated the achievements of Mediterranean civilizations, the modern wonders span the globe, representing cultures and traditions from every inhabited continent. One of the most recognized modern wonders stands in the mountains of Peru, hidden from Western eyes until the early 20th century. Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas, perches on a mountain ridge nearly 2,500 meters above sea level. Its stone buildings and terraced fields harmoniously integrated into the dramatic landscape of the Andes. Built in the 15th century and abandoned about 100 years later, this city demonstrates the Inca civilization's remarkable engineering skills, with precisely fitted stone blocks that require no mortar and an extensive system of terraces that prevent erosion on the steep mountainsides. If we were to visit Machu Picchu as the sun rises over the Andean peaks, what would we experience? The first rays of light would touch the highest stone walls, gradually illuminating the entire complex as the sun climbs higher. Morning mist might cling to the steep slopes surrounding the city, creating the impression that this ancient settlement floats among the clouds. The silence would be profound, broken only by the call of birds and the distant sound of the Urubamba River flowing far below. In this moment, we might feel what the American explorer Hiram Bingham felt when he first encountered the ruins in 1911, a sense of having stepped outside time, of connecting with a civilization whose achievements speak across centuries. On the other side of the world, in northern India, stands another architectural wonder that represents the height of a different civilization's achievements. The Taj Mahal, built between 1632 and 1653 by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a tomb for his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal, is often described as the most beautiful building in the world. Its perfect symmetry, the luminous quality of its white marble, and the exquisite details of its inlaid stone decorations and calligraphy make it a wonder of both engineering and artistic design. The Taj Mahal is best seen in the changing light of day, from the pink glow of dawn to the golden warmth of sunset, when the marble seems to absorb and reflect the colors of the sky. In the quiet of evening, as the last visitors depart and the gardens grow still, the white dome and minarets of the Taj are reflected in the long pool that stretches before the main building, creating a double image of perfect beauty. Here, architecture becomes poetry, a tangible expression of love that has moved visitors for nearly 4 centuries. Far to the east, stretching across mountains and valleys for thousands of kilometers, lies another wonder that represents an almost inconceivable investment of human labor over many centuries. The Great Wall of China, not a single structure, but a series of walls and fortifications built between the 5th century BCE and the 16th century CE, stands as a testament to Imperial China's determination to protect its northern borders from nomadic invasions. At its peak, during the Ming Dynasty, the wall stretched for more than 6,000 kilometers, incorporating watchtowers, barracks, and garrison stations. To walk along a restored section of the Great Wall today is to connect with generations of builders and defenders who shaped this enormous structure. The wall follows the natural contours of the mountains, rising and falling with the terrain, sometimes at slopes so steep that climbing them requires significant effort. From the heights of the wall, one can see it stretching away into the distance, following ridge lines until it disappears into the haze. The scale of the undertaking, millions of workers over many centuries moving earth and stone to create this barrier, is almost impossible to comprehend fully. Crossing the Pacific, we come to a wonder of a very different kind, one created not by imperial decree, but by the spiritual devotion of a people connecting with their ancestral traditions. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is home to the Moai, nearly 900 massive stone statues with elongated features and solemn expressions. Carved by Polynesian settlers between the 13th and 16th centuries, these statues, some weighing as much as 86 tons, were somehow transported from the quarry where they were carved to ceremonial platforms around the island's perimeter. To stand among the Moai at sunset, as the low light casts long shadows from these imposing figures, is to feel the presence of a civilization that invested enormous resources in creating these representations of deified ancestors. The statues face inward, watching over the communities they were meant to protect, their backs to the vast Pacific Ocean that isolates this small island from the nearest mainland by more than 3,000 kilometers. In the silence of evening, with the sound of distant waves, the only accompaniment, the mystery and power of these stone guardians becomes almost tangible. Moving northward, we encounter a wonder that combines architectural beauty with acoustic perfection. The Sydney Opera House, completed in 1973 after 16 years of construction, has become not just an icon of Australia, but one of the most recognizable buildings in the world. Its distinctive sail-shaped shells, covered in more than 1 million white and cream-colored ceramic tiles, create a structure that seems at once anchored to its harbor location and ready to take flight. As evening falls over Sydney Harbor, the Opera House is illuminated, its white shells glowing against the darkening sky and reflected in the water below. From across the harbor, the building appears to float on the water, its geometric forms creating a dramatic contrast with the organic curves of the shoreline and the fluid movement of the water. Inside, the concert halls provide not only visual drama, but acoustic excellence, allowing the building to fulfill its function as a home for the performing arts, while also serving as a powerful symbol of human creativity. On the continent of Africa, carved into rose-colored sandstone cliffs in what is now Jordan, we find another architectural wonder that blends human creativity with natural beauty. Petra, the ancient city of the Nabateans, features buildings and tombs carved directly into the rock face, most famously the treasury, Al-Kazne, whose elaborate classical facade emerges suddenly into view after visitors walk through a narrow gorge called the Sikh. Built primarily between the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE, Petra served as the capital of the Nabatean kingdom and a crucial hub for trade routes connecting Arabia, Egypt, Syria, and the Mediterranean. To approach Petra in the early morning, walking through the Siq as the first light begins to illuminate the upper reaches of the rock walls, is to experience one of the most dramatic reveals in all of architecture. The narrow passage, with walls rising over 100 meters on either side, suddenly opens to a view of the treasury, its columns and pediments carved into the rose-colored stone and catching the morning light. The contrast between the natural formation of the rock and the precise, human-designed architectural elements creates a uniquely harmonious blend of nature and art. In the Americas, another ancient city stands as a testament to pre-Columbian engineering and urban planning. Chichen Itza, a major center of Maya civilization in the Yucatan Peninsula, features structures that demonstrate not just architectural skill, but advanced astronomical knowledge. The main pyramid, known as El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan, is designed so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the late afternoon sun creates a pattern of light and shadow that resembles a serpent descending the northern staircase, a deliberate effect that aligns perfectly with Maya cosmology. To witness this phenomenon, standing among thousands of quiet observers as the sun reaches the critical angle and the shadow serpent begins its descent down the pyramid steps, is to connect directly with the astronomical knowledge and spiritual beliefs of the Maya. The precision required to create this effect, the exact angle of the stairs, the placement of the serpent heads at the base of the northern staircase, the orientation of the entire structure, reveals a sophisticated understanding of solar movements and a determination to incorporate this knowledge into monumental architecture. Across the Atlantic, in the heart of Rome, stands a structure that has influenced the design of public gathering spaces for nearly 2,000 years. The Colosseum, completed in 80 CE, could hold up to 50,000 spectators for gladiatorial contests, mock sea battles, animal hunts, executions, reenactments of famous battles, and dramas based on classical mythology. Its innovative features included numbered entrances to help spectators find their seats, an underground complex of tunnels and cages for animals and participants, and a retractable awning to provide shade. To stand in the Colosseum as evening falls, when most tourists have departed and the ancient stone glows warmly in the last light, is to feel the weight of history in a particularly immediate way. The sheer scale of the structure, its elegant arched facade, and the mathematical precision of its layout all speak to Roman engineering excellence. Yet there's also a somber aspect to this wonder, a reminder of the violence and spectacle that once entertained thousands within these walls, now silent except for the flutter of birds nesting in the ancient arches. As night deepens and your thoughts perhaps begin to drift toward the edges of sleep, let's end our exploration of human-made wonders by considering one final achievement: different from all the others we've discussed. The International Space Station, orbiting more than 400 kilometers above Earth, represents a collaboration among 16 nations and required assembly in space, with components launched from different continents. Continuously inhabited since 2000, the station serves as both a laboratory for scientific research and a symbol of what humans can achieve when they work together across political and cultural boundaries. Unlike the other wonders we've explored, the space station cannot be visited by ordinary travelers, but on clear nights, it can be seen moving across the sky, a bright point of light traveling faster than the stars, completing an orbit of Earth every 90 minutes. To watch this light move across the night sky is to witness a wonder of our own era, a human outpost in the vastness of space, where people live and work in an environment entirely hostile to human life, protected only by the structures they have built and the systems they have engineered. The International Space Station, like the ancient pyramids or the medieval cathedrals, represents human ambition, reaching beyond what seems possible. It embodies the same spirit that drove the creators of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the desire to build something unprecedented, to push the boundaries of what can be achieved with the technology and resources available, to leave a legacy that outlasts individual lives. As you rest now, perhaps drifting towards sleep, consider the thread that connects the builders of the ancient wonders to the engineers and astronauts of today's space programs, and indeed, to all who imagine and create. It's a uniquely human thread, woven from curiosity, ambition, technical skill, artistic vision, and the desire to make something meaningful. The forms and technologies change across centuries and cultures, but the essential human drive to create wonders remains constant. A quiet flame passed from generation to generation, illuminating our shared journey through time. The stars continue their silent movement across the night sky, the same stars that shone above the ancient wonders, that guided sailors to Alexandria and pilgrims to Olympia, that now shine above the modern wonders scattered across our planet and the newest wonder orbiting above it. In their steady light, we might find a connection to all those who have looked up in wonder throughout human history, and to all who have been inspired to create wonders of their own. In many ways, the modern wonders of the world represent a continuation of the same human ambitions and skills that created the ancient seven wonders. Whether building with massive stone blocks, delicate marble inlay, reinforced concrete, or advanced composite materials, humans throughout history have sought to create structures that inspire awe, that solve practical problems, that demonstrate technical mastery, and that connect the present moment to something that feels eternal. The ancient wonders were all created in the Mediterranean region, reflecting the limited geographical awareness of the Greek and Roman writers who compiled the original lists. Today's wonders span the globe, representing diverse cultures, belief systems, and historical periods. Yet they share with their ancient counterparts certain fundamental qualities: scale, beauty, technical innovation, cultural significance, and the power to inspire wonder in those who encounter them. As your thoughts grow quieter and sleep perhaps draws nearer, consider how the very concept of a wonder transcends time and culture. The Greek word that gave us the term seven wonders, thaumaata, implies astonishment, something that causes us to marvel. Every culture has created its own thaumaata, structures or artworks intended to amaze, to demonstrate mastery, to connect the human with the divine or the eternal. From Stonehenge to the Forbidden City, from Angkor Wat to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, from the rock churches of Lalibela to the temples of Kyoto, humans have always built wonders. What makes these creations endure in cultural memory, even when the physical structures themselves may crumble? Perhaps it is their ability to speak to something fundamental in human experience. Our awareness of our own mortality set against our desire to create something lasting. Our small physical size set against our capacity for grand visions. Our brief individual lives set against the continuity of human creativity across generations. The seven wonders of the ancient world, like their modern counterparts around the globe, remind us of the depth and breadth of human achievement. They stand as testimony to what can be accomplished through vision, skill, persistence, and collaboration. Even when they exist now, only in written descriptions or archaeological fragments, they continue to inspire not just admiration for what was built, but reflection on what might yet be created. As night deepens around you, and as the quiet rhythm of your breathing perhaps begins to slow towards sleep, let the wonders we've explored tonight rest gently in your thoughts. The massive stones of the Great Pyramid, the lush terraces of the Hanging Gardens, the marble columns of the Temple of Artemis, the gold and ivory majesty of the statue of Zeus, the sculptural richness of the mausoleum, the bronze brilliance of the Colossus, the guiding light of the Pharos. Each exists now in your imagination, as they have in the imaginations of countless others across the centuries. And beyond these ancient seven, the wonders that have risen since: Machu Picchu among the clouds, the Taj Mahal reflected in still waters, the Great Wall winding across mountains, the Moai watching over Easter Island, the sail-shaped shells of the Sydney Opera House, the rose-red city of Petra, the pyramid of Chichen Itza with its shadow serpent, the arched elegance of the Colosseum, and the space station orbiting silently above. All these, too, join the constellation of human achievements that inspire wonder. In this quiet moment, as the day ends and rest begins, there is a peculiar beauty in contemplating these monuments created by people long gone or half a world away. It reminds us of our connection to the broader human story, a story written not just in books, but in stone and bronze, in marble and iron, in glass and steel, in patterns of light and shadow falling across carefully designed spaces. It is a story still being written, with new wonders yet to emerge from human imagination and skill. Perhaps tonight, as you drift toward sleep, you might dream of wonders, those built by human hands across the centuries, and those yet unbuilt, waiting in the realm of possibility. And perhaps tomorrow, refreshed by rest, you might look at the world around you with a sense of wonder renewed, seeing in even ordinary things the extraordinary capacity of humans to envision, to create, to build, and to inspire one another across the vast distances of time and space. The stars wheel slowly overhead, constant companions to all the wonders humans have ever built. In their ancient light, millennia old by the time it reaches Earth, we might find a fitting perspective on our own creations, both fleeting and enduring, both small against the cosmic scale and magnificent in their testament to the creative spirit that has defined humanity throughout our history. In that spirit of wonder, rest now and dream of wonders past and wonders yet to come. But the story of human wonder-making does not end with grand structures or engineering marvels. As significant as these physical creations are, humans have created other kinds of wonders that leave no visible monuments, yet profoundly shape our lives and our understanding of the world. The development of mathematics, for instance, represents a wonder of abstract thought that underlies many of the architectural and engineering achievements we've explored. The ancient Egyptians who built the Great Pyramid understood enough geometry to create a structure with remarkably accurate proportions. The Babylonians who may have created the Hanging Gardens had developed sophisticated number systems that allowed for complex calculations. The Greeks, who described the seven wonders, had begun to transform mathematics from a practical tool for measurement and accounting into a systematic exploration of abstract patterns and relationships. Over centuries, this mathematical tradition evolved and expanded, incorporating contributions from India, the Islamic world, China, and Europe, eventually producing the calculus that makes modern engineering possible and the algorithms that power today's digital technologies. Though we cannot visit the Pythagorean theorem or admire the elegance of calculus as we might a physical monument, these mathematical innovations represent wonders of human thought no less significant than the stone and bronze creations on the ancient list. Similarly, the development of writing stands as one of humanity's most transformative achievements, allowing knowledge to be preserved and transmitted across generations with a precision impossible in purely oral traditions. The earliest writing systems emerged in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt around 5,000 years ago, initially as practical tools for recording economic transactions, religious texts, and royal proclamations. Over time, writing evolved to capture a wider range of human expression: literature, philosophy, history, personal correspondence. The Library of Alexandria, which stood near the Pharos lighthouse, represented an attempt to gather all of this written knowledge in one place. Though the library itself was destroyed, the ideal it represented, the preservation and democratization of knowledge, continues in institutions around the world and in the digital repositories of the modern era. The accumulated written wisdom of humanity, passed down and expanded over thousands of years, represents a wonder perhaps more significant than any physical structure. More recently, the development of digital technology has created new kinds of wonders, not physical monuments rising against the horizon, but networks of information and communication that span the globe and transform how we interact with our world and with each other. The Internet, a decentralized system with no single physical location, connects billions of people, allowing instantaneous communication across vast distances and providing access to an unprecedented wealth of information. Like the ancient wonders, these modern achievements represent the culmination of many smaller innovations, the collaborative work of thousands of individuals building on each other's contributions. And like the ancient wonders, they expand what humans can see, experience, and create, not by raising stone toward the sky, but by extending our reach through invisible networks of connection. As the night grows deeper and your thoughts perhaps drift closer to sleep, consider how these intangible wonders, mathematical principles, written knowledge, digital networks, interact with and enable the physical wonders we've explored. The Great Pyramid, could not have been built without mathematical understanding and systems for organizing labor and resources. The modern space station depends on both ancient and modern mathematics, on accumulated scientific knowledge preserved through writing, and on digital systems that coordinate its construction and operation. Perhaps what defines a wonder, whether ancient or modern, physical or abstract, is not just its scale or beauty or technical sophistication, but its capacity to expand human possibility, to allow us to do, to experience, to understand something that would otherwise remain beyond our reach. The seven wonders of the ancient world expanded what humans could build. Mathematics expands what we can calculate and predict. Writing expands what we can remember and communicate. Digital technology expands whom we can connect with and what information we can access. In this sense, the creation of wonders, whether monuments of stone, systems of thought, or networks of connection, seems fundamental to human experience, a manifestation of our unique capacity to envision what does not yet exist and then to bring that vision into reality. It is a capacity that transcends time and culture, linking us to both our ancestors and our descendants. As you rest now, perhaps hovering in that liminal space between wakefulness and dreams, let these thoughts about human creativity and wonder-making settle gently in your mind. The capacity for wonder, both for experiencing awe at what exists and for creating new things that inspire awe in others, connects us to the deepest aspects of our humanity and to the broader human community across time and space. The seven wonders of the ancient world, those structures that impress the earliest list makers with their scale and beauty and innovation, have mostly vanished from the physical world. Yet they remain alive in cultural memory, continuing to inspire new creations, new lists of wonders, new attempts to push the boundaries of what humans can build and achieve. In this way, they have achieved a kind of immortality after all, not through the durability of their physical materials, but through their lasting impact on human imagination. As the stars continue their silent movement across the night sky, as your breath perhaps grows deeper and your thoughts begin to dissolve into the quiet rhythms of sleep, carry with you this sense of connection to humanity's wonder makers across the centuries. From the unnamed architects who designed the Great Pyramid to the international team that built the space station, from the mathematicians who developed geometry to the programmers who created the internet, all are part of a continuous human effort to create wonders that expand what is possible. In that expanding circle of possibility, in that ongoing conversation between past achievement and future potential, between individual vision and collective effort, between practical necessity and the pursuit of beauty, we might find not just appreciation for what has been built, but inspiration for what might yet be created. New wonders waiting to emerge from human imagination, skill, and collaboration. Rest now, and perhaps dream of wonders.